My best friend got into a life-threatening accident, and his abusive family came to the hospital to try impede his recovery. His ex-wife resorted to burning down their home to get them to leave him alone, plus all updates. Renee and Justin were childhood friends who grew up in an extremely restrictive and religious cult. This cult was so extreme that reading anything that wasn't religious material was a punishable offense. But despite this, Renee and Justin read a lot. This brought them closer, and in high school they started dating. Unfortunately, their parents caught them and had an absolute mental breakdown about it. They forced Justin to marry Renee. They married, but what their families didn't understand is that putting them together only made them stronger. Over the next 2 years, Renee and Justin set up a secret bank account and started stealing money from their parents' paychecks in amounts just small enough so they wouldn't notice. When they were 20, they had enough money to get out and start over. They left their house in the dead of night with nothing but what could fit in their car and uprooted to live across the country. Pretty quickly after they moved, they decided to get amicably divorced, since they never wanted to be married anyway. They still lived together for a while, and basically became something between platonic roommates and each other's only family. Over time, they started dating other people. Some partners were scared off by the weird relationship between them, but most got it, and understood that Justin and Ray had basically bonded through mutual trauma. This whole time, both their families and other members of their community were relentlessly harassing them. People were showing up at their house at all hours, and they had reason to believe people were trying to steal their identities over the years, though they'd fortunately both put a freeze on their credit, so nothing ever came of it. Then Justin had a bad accident, a really bad accident. He was on his bike and a car blew through a stop sign without slowing down and plowed right into him. He had to be rushed to the hospital and landed in the ICU. Ray was his emergency contact, and I was with her and some other friends when she got the call. I immediately drove her to the hospital with a couple of other people, and she was melting down, understandably. The hospital staff wouldn't let us all in when we got there, but they let Ray in. She came out periodically to let us know what was going on. Justin wasn't unconscious, but he was totally out of it and didn't seem to know she was there, probably from the painkillers, but she was convinced he had permanent debilitating brain damage, and basically the group of us were just soothing her and reassuring her it would be fine. A friend of ours who worked at the hospital as an MRI tech was also stopping by when she could on her breaks and calming down Ray. We'd been there all night and part of the day at this point, and the medical staff was giving us reason to be hopeful, but things got worse. To this day, no one knows how they found out, but 14 hours after Justin's accident, his parents, uncles, and grandfather showed up. They immediately had all of us removed from the ICU, Ray included. Unfortunately, as his ex-wife, she was no longer his legal next of kin and had no rights against his blood family. At this point, she was absolutely hysterical and inconsolable. She was convinced Justin's family would hurt him. I'm ashamed to say all three of us that were there with her thought she was overreacting. We all knew Ray and Justin had left a messed up situation, but it wasn't like his own family would do anything to impede his recovery. She was getting angry with us for trying to calm her down and tried to explain that according to their religion, she and Justin deserved punishment from God, and only the greatest suffering could prompt repenting and redemption. She said their families embraced this thinking and wanted them to suffer, because it would prove that they did the wrong thing by leaving, and suffering would drive them back to the fold. She said as long as Justin was with his family, he wouldn't be safe. Our friend who worked for the hospital came and found Ray at that point. She made Ray swear up and down she wouldn't tell anyone she told her this because she could get in deep trouble for releasing privileged information to someone unauthorized, but she'd caught wind that Justin's parents were aggressively demanding the hospital release him into their care, and they were involving lawyers. The hospital was currently refusing because Justin wasn't stable enough to leave, but our friend warned Ray that as soon as Justin got to be stable, or the lawyers scared the hospital enough, it's possible the parents would be able to take Justin. This shocked the rest of us. Realizing his parents were not only willing to remove Justin from the hospital that had saved his life in the condition he was still in, but were actively trying to do it, made us really get, for the first time, why Ray was going out of her head with fear. At this point, Ray snapped into do-or-die mode. Convinced that Justin was about to literally die if she didn't act, she decided she would do everything in her power to start a fire at home so that Justin's family would want to run back to put it out. And this wasn't too hard, because she had a lot of dirt on the whole community she came from. Like a madwoman, she started blowing the whistle all over Justin's family. She called the IRS's fraud hotline and detailed all the ways that the family business was committing tax fraud. She submitted an ATF tip about how that same family business was illegally selling firearms without a license and without following any of the proper protocols, and was knowingly selling firearms to convicted felons. She reported one of Justin's uncles for owning several firearms as a convicted felon. She also reported Justin's mom's unlicensed daycare business, which was apparently extremely shady, including having over 30 children packed into one house, with Justin's mom as the only adult, and many of the childcare duties being farmed out to Justin's 12 and 14-year-old sisters. She called CPS on Justin's uncles and his parents. In all of these reports, she provided extensive details. She finished her calls and emails, and then she waited. kid. We all waited for several hours, and nothing happened. Then, miraculously, Justin became lucid enough to understand what was going on and make his own decisions, and he kicked his family out again. From there began a slow but steady path to recovery. In all the relief and excitement to see Justin on the mend, we'd almost forgotten about Ray's campaign of desperation, until a couple of weeks later, when the screaming voicemails started pouring in to both of them. First, the business was being investigated by the IRS, then it was being investigated for illegal firearms dealing, then the daycare was getting investigated. At first, Ray felt a little guilty, but then she was like, you know what? No regrets. They would have unalived Justin. From what they've been able to piece together in the year and a half since this happened, the business has gone under, and the daycare is shuttered. The uncle is 6 months into a new 5-year prison sentence for firearm possession. CPS investigated, which scared the crap out of the family, but nothing really came of it. That said, the parents are now too scared to keep the kids home from school, and with the unlicensed daycare shut down, the mom's not exploiting her daughter's labor anyway, so she has no incentive to keep them home. So Justin's little siblings are at least getting their education. Justin and Ray are both happy and thriving. Justin, unfortunately, will never fully recover from the accident. He has some permanent neurological damage that results in tremors, but he's pumped to be alive, he can work a full-time job, he can still be pretty physically active, and as far as I'm concerned, he wins. Update. So since I last posted, of course, a lot has happened in the meantime. Ray and her girlfriend got engaged at the end of 2019, and were planning their wedding for early fall 2020. When the vid happened, they ended up doing a small outdoor elopement that summer instead, with about 10 witnesses, including me and a few others from our core friend group, who Justin and Ray refer to as their chosen family. Justin got ordained online through the Universal Life Church and performed the ceremony. It was an awesome day. Ray's family upped their harassment considerably between her engagement and the wedding. Members of their religious order who live in our city were showing up at her house to try to talk to her. When she wouldn't answer the door, they would leave creepy notes taped to her door with short messages like, "Repent." After the wedding, though, the contact dropped off considerably, which she was very happy about. Justin is doing well. He's been in a serious relationship for the last 2 years with a woman we all love, who has meshed into our little chosen family really well. He's also made amazing progress on his neurological issues from the accident. The doctors say the effects will never go away, but he's adapted really well. He's working full-time with no problem, and is cycling every day again. He's still getting a lot of harassment, unfortunately, but it never escalates to anything scarier than a lot of phone calls and the occasional doorbell, which he never answers. Justin and Ray still don't know how their families of origin are tracking them. They've been living in our city for over a decade now, and they've each moved residences several times during that time frame and changed their numbers a few times. Each time, the family seems to know that new information almost immediately. They continue calling them and leaving voicemails at the new numbers. Members of their religious group are showing up at the new house almost immediately, etc. Justin was subletting for a couple of years in a gated condo complex, which was awesome while it lasted, since his family's emissaries couldn't get in. After my last post, I bullied them into getting a forensic sweep of all their devices and digital accounts, but it turned up nothing. No spyware on their devices, no logins to any of their accounts coming from their birth state, etc. Their social media is heavily locked down, privacy-wise, and even then they're both very careful about what they post. I've Googled both their names, and I'm not finding anything on those private database sites involving their info, so that part remains a mystery. I still welcome ideas on how their families are tracking them. The biggest update, though, is that Justin and Ray have become an informal lifeline out of their creepy hometown, which has been really cool to see. The oldest of Justin's little sisters was the first one. She turned 18 early last year and reached out to Justin on Instagram. She had been accepted to college, and her parents forbade her from going and had upped their strictness, including grounding her, because they were so ticked off she applied at all. Justin sent her a plane ticket, and she followed in his footsteps, packed up her essential belongings when her parents were both out of the house, and got the F out of Dodge. She stayed with him in our city, and then in the fall, moved to college and is living in the dorms there. Justin has assured her that she always has a home with him on her school breaks, and that if there's another COVID wave that closes her dorms and pushes her classes to being online only, she can come stay with him again and do her classes online from his house. The next Lifeline recipient was a 19-year-old boy Justin and Ray didn't really know, who had been a friend of Justin's sister from school. He stayed in touch with her after she got out, and Justin ended up buying a plane ticket for him too. He actually came and stayed with me, since I had a spare room and Justin's sister was still at his place at the time. And he was a really cool little dude. I helped him get a job, and after a few months, he moved into a house share with roommates his own age. We all still see him around a lot, and he seems to be doing really well. Let me tell you, the kid is overjoyed with the casual dating model in the secular world, and has been putting a lot of mileage on the apps. He doesn't think he wants to go to college, but I've been encouraging him to look at trade programs and apprenticeships. We'll see. The most recent recipient of the Justin and Ray Instagram DM Foundation for Cult Escapism is Ray's 25-year-old cousin. She was stuck in an abusive marriage, and the religious group, Cheer Her Family, was basically telling her to suck it up and deal with it, and be a submissive, godly wife, and try harder to get pregnant to make her husband happy. She got in touch with Ray because she had no one else to turn to, and Ray helped her get out and come to our city. That's been a bit of a weird situation, because unlike the other two, the cousin is still more or less a true believer. She only left because she was convinced her husband would unalive her, and she's been kind of crappy and homophobic about Ray's wife, even though Ray is literally the only one helping her. But Ray has been an absolute angel to her despite that, and keeps telling us that deprogramming takes time when we complain about her. It's unclear yet how the family feels about Justin and Ray helping the three escapees, or whether they're blaming them as corrupting influences. Weirdly, the cousin and the friend have both been getting the same harassment that Justin and Ray have consistently gotten over the years, but Justin's sister hasn't heard a single peep, either here in our city or away at college. Beats me as to why or what the difference is.